Hey, welcome back to the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast. I'm David Flores, your host, CEO of Global Trac Solutions. And I'm excited because joining me here today is a company that we get to feature for the first time here on the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast. The company is Numinus Wellness, Inc. You can find them on the TSX Venture Exchange under NUMI. And joining me here today is the company's CEO, Payton Nyquvest. Payton, thank you so much for taking time to join me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you on. So maybe to kick things off, if you want to provide us with a brief overview of who Numinus is, what the company specifically is focused on here in the emerging sector of medicinal psychedelics, I think that'd be a great way to kick things off.
Sure. Very simply, Numinus is here to provide safe, evidence-based psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Really our focus, we were founded almost 3 years ago now, and with a mandate of how do we advance this category forward, working in collaboration with research groups and other organizations who were doing an amazing and have been doing an amazing body of work in the space, and how do we help support the infrastructure build out of that so that the people who need access to these therapies the most are getting them in a way that is really focused and centered around the outcomes of those people who are going through treatment.
Very cool. Now I know that there's a lot going on in the space right now with psychedelics.
Mhm.
You guys seem to have really positioned yourself quite effectively here, and from a growth perspective, I see a lot of potential. And on that topic, most specifically, I want to talk about some of the news that came out recently about Numinus' recent acquisition of a company called Mindspace Wellbeing. You want to talk to me a
Mhm.
little bit about what that acquisition means from a growth perspective, as well as from a value perspective here for the company as it moves forward?
Yeah, great question. The Mindspace is a group that we've been talking to for about 2 years, and as we continue to look at, as I was mentioning, the sort of infrastructure container, as we all know, it's not as easy as just offering a psychedelic experience for someone and sending them on their way, but really, making sure that we're taking a very informed approach around what are those supportive practices, and what is the container to really hold someone through this journey that they essentially go on for a lot of people for the rest of their lives. And with what Mindspace has created, and the mental health and mindfulness based programming that they've put together, that's anchored in reality as well. They've been operating for 10 years. They've got a great roster of practitioners. The quickly, just the practitioner bottleneck we see as really being the big bottleneck in this space. Yeah, we could race out and acquire or build a whole bunch of locations, but if you don't have the people to actually do the therapy in a really thorough and intentional way, you're just bringing on a whole bunch of burn rate without really focusing on what's best for the client. So the acquisition for us is huge for a number of different reasons. The practitioners, the programming that they've developed, a very well trusted and reliable brand in mental health, and all the way to Joe and the team that he's got, who have been running as we look to really expand our infrastructure and services footprint in Canada and the US. To be able to bring them on board to help with that expansion is extremely exciting for us, especially for this year, really looking at growth is as being a big priority.
Yeah, it's all about growth right now. I mean, even from on the industry level, we're seeing it
Mhm.
everywhere. And I think for myself, also being a CEO, running a company here in the psychedelic space, at least for myself personally, one thing that I find quite intriguing and sometimes challenging is this balance that we have to create with balancing, being able to develop a successful company that obviously drives value for shareholders and stakeholders and attracts new investors. But on the other side of it, there's this understanding that we're also part of something much bigger. We're also having a role and a part in, helping to bring psychedelic healing into society and the impact and change that can bring for millions of people across
Mhm.
the globe. I mean, it's quite an interesting dynamic. So I'm curious to understand from your perspective, how do you tackle that balance, and understanding that you've got to build a company that, of course, goes on to do big things and drives value, but at the same time, be an ally for the industry itself.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Numinous was founded. Psychedelic assisted psychotherapy had saved my life. I was really, really suffering with some severe health issues. And so, I come to this space as a patient really first. And I think, at least for us, the level of reverence that we have for this work throughout the entire organization is really important. And I think, as you mentioned, that balance of yes, you're building an organization, but also working in partnership. And it's funny, if you read all the investment decks, they all have this $100 billion, these huge numbers that we're throwing out, and it's going to take more than a handful of junior public companies to make this work. It's, if that number is accurate, which we all, I think, can agree that it is, it's going to take a lot of oars, all paddling in the same direction, to, again, if we're really focusing on people who need this treatment, it's going to take a ton of collaboration. It's going to take a ton of work, on a number of different fronts. We're talking about changing healthcare, really. And, whether it's drug development, clinic models, branding, education,
Right.
there's so many things, and not every company can do everything. And is there, I always think the competition conversation is a funny one. When we founded Numinus, there wasn't, other than Compass, there was not a lot of, or really any sort of corporate interest in the space. And so people started asking, what do you think about competition? And I would always laugh, and I go, like, it's nice to know that you're not, the only crazy person in the room anymore. Like, it's working. What we've talked about trying to support is working, and that access is starting to be provided, which I think is great. And I think we're barely out of the start gate right now. And I think, yes, there'll be times where there's competition and market share and stuff like that, but we're far away from that. And I think right now we need to really be intentional and thoughtful about how we're building this category and supporting this category. Not to point to the 60s and 70s, but we don't want to, recreate some of the issues that happened the first time around, or not the first time around, but the last time around, really, around psychedelics and this huge amount of interest. So I think we just need to be smart. I think, and I think collaboration is a big part of that. And I think that's what's so exciting with research groups, and really this being driven by not-for-profit academia, and research organizations, is there was a ton of legwork already done in a non-corporate interest necessarily way, which I think is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned collaborations. I know that Numinus, has partnered with MAPS, and you guys are working with them. I'd love to maybe see if you can elaborate a little bit more on what that brings into Numinus, and how you guys are actually working together.
Yeah, it's a relationship that we've had for a number of years now. It's even longer than that for some of the Numinus team. Dr. Evan Wood, who's our chief medical officer, ran an organization called the British Columbia Center on Substance Use, which was actually the site for the phase 3 MAPS MDMA trials. So there's a long working relationship there with that organization. And as I mentioned, a few of the big things for us is providing access for people, but also the training of practitioners. And that relationship is very robust in both of those regards. We'll be carrying out some of the MAPS MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder work in Canada this year, but also, as been announced by us as well as Health Canada, the intention for Health Canada to change the special access drug program brings in the potential to really, really lean in and support that work in a much more robust way. And that takes training, that takes protocol implementation. And so that's a lot of what that collaboration is. And it's, it's not a one-pager news release collaboration. It's a hundreds of pages document that took us about 6 months or so to put together. So we're super grateful, obviously, MAPS and the amount of experience that they have in this space, and to be their first industry collaboration is something we're really grateful and excited about.
Yeah, most definitely. I really think that the work that you guys are involved in on the practitioner level is very fascinating. I think it's important, on our advisory board here, we have Kelly Folkrod. She runs the Organic Mental Health Center down in Austin, Texas. And one of the things that she talks to me about all the time is how overwhelmed she is, with everything growing in this space right now, and not having the resources necessarily to be able to rely on to help support, be able to get herself to a place where she can take care of some of the patients that are coming to her and whatnot. So I think what you guys are doing on that level, it's very important right now. I think that's a side of this industry that a lot of people don't understand, is that as interest grows in it, the bandwidth, really increases. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing there on that end. And then maybe before I let you go here, Payton, I like to throw this question out to, leaders in the companies in this space. I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, there is a bit of a personal element to everything here involved with what you're doing. But talk to me, what really inspires and motivates you on a daily basis to be involved here in this space of medicinal psychedelics?
Yeah. As I said, a real anchoring interest in just what I saw it able to do for me personally. I was someone with over half of my life really dedicated to mental health, and through that dedication, going through so many different treatment models and still not getting better, and to see psychedelics not replace necessarily a lot of that, but make it so impactful and tangible for people and shift people. You always hear this comment around, it's like 10 years of psychotherapy in one session. And that's true. But also, if you really think about that comment, imagine if you did 10 years of psychotherapy in one session, you'd need a pretty strong container to allow you to explore that space and integrate that into your daily life. So I think, the thing for us that's so exciting, especially up in Canada, is you're seeing Health Canada be so supportive. You're seeing regulation being so supportive. And, obviously, if you look at the state of the world in regards to mental health, it's needed now more than ever. But the openness, I think, to doing this in a really intentional way, and the openness that the public seems to have to be really keenly interested, I think for us is exciting, and the impact that this space could potentially have on millions and millions of people is obviously a huge driver for us.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. Squeeze one more question out of you. And it's just, with so much going on the public market side of this, the industry right now, you have a lot of people in the investment community really starting to take a very serious look at companies that are in the space now. I think the validation is there now. And so I think, you do have those, venture capital firms and, again, investors starting to come in now and seeing how they can get involved. With that in mind, what would you say out there to, maybe even your existing, shareholders, but anybody that's looking at Numinus, from an investment perspective, what lies ahead here for the company in 2021 with so much going on here in this space? And, what do you think makes Numinus unique in this space?
I think our length of, our Health Canada licensed lab, which we didn't talk about too much, has been operational since 2012. The Mindspace, as we talked about, has been operational for over 10 years. There's so much knowledge and learning and experience that we've got under our belt already. For us, 2012 or 2021 is really all about implementing all of this exciting stuff that we talked about doing last year. I think this is the year of us really doing the things. And for me, as a CEO, the thing that I'm most excited about is seeing people go through treatment, and whether that's in a research capacity or broader than that. I think this year is going to be really exciting in the fact that you're going to see this work start to be provided for people, and for us, both on the lab and sort of drug side of things, but also, seeing how that's developing and unfolding in the clinics, and that network really broadening this year. We're just super excited about, and we're grateful for all the support that everybody continues to give us, and glad to have everybody along for the ride.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to continue following your story. We'll make sure we get all of the contact information for the company up here. But Payton, thank you so much again for taking time. I really enjoy it, and hope we can have you on a future podcast here to talk more about the company.
Cool. Would love to. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much.